clouds above the 80s slowly drift, white and golden, like the backdrop for a painted cowboy. On my car speakers, the voices of a defense attorney and an FBI forensics expert go back and forth. They quibble about the reliability of DNA found on a dirty towel. The clouds get darker until they're gray, chthonic masses with strange tendrils snaking down into the distant hills. I pass Elko, fearing a tornado will form and pull me up to some nameless place above the sky. The voices in the courtroom say they're adjourning for the day. Then the clouds part. The white salt flats spread out before me, bright under parting skies. In the shafts of golden sunlight, I see a tiny, smiling face and hear an angel's chorus. It sings. We are Charlie Kirk, we carry the flame. Hello, Habibis. You're in Utah now.
We are Charlie Kirk.
Oh, God.
We carry the flame.
Oh my God. I don't like this.
I don't know any of the other.
He doesn't know the rest.
Wait, now I'll do it like Michael Bublé.
See, he has us hostage because he has to start the script after the cold open.
We are Charlie Kirk. We'll carry the flame.
Can't do anything about it.
You can't do anything about it. That's right, because I gotta. If you're hearing this, well done. You found a way to connect to the internet. Welcome to the QAA podcast episode 3. Oh, sorry, I kicked a garbage can. Welcome to the QAA. Fuck. Welcome. Shit.
This is taken from the talk.
God damn it. No, we'll leave all this in. This is where we are. At 382, the Charlie Kirk murder hearings is the name. No, this is where we are now.
Okay.
Episode 382, the Charlie Kirk murder hearing circus, featuring... Oh, Jesus, my fucking alarm's going off. What a mess.
What the hell is going on?
Again, Julian, I'm carrying 12 grocery bags. The bottoms have fallen out. The Twinkie, it's 12 packs of Hostess snacks, and I'm
no
caught
food in
fucking red-handed in the parking lot.
There's no food
Let's
in
just
there.
start the whole fucking... This can be all part of the cold open, and now the real show starts.
Okay, that's weird.
If you're hearing this, well done. You found a way to connect to the internet. Welcome to the QAA podcast episode 382, the Charlie Kirk murder hearing circus, featuring Abner, Hauge, and Haley Orion. As always, we are your hosts, Jake Rockatansky,
Julian Field.
Liv Agar.
And Travis View. So yes, today we are joined by investigative journalists Abner Hauge and Haley Orion from Left Coast Right Watch and Arizona Right Watch. Thank you so much for joining. It's been too long. It's been years.
We're back, baby.
It back, yeah, boy.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, great to see all your beautiful faces.
I think the last time I saw you, Travis, you were getting harassed by Jim Watkins.
Yeah. That sounds accurate. It was a hell of an experience.
Now, that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
From another world.
Boy, I still get his newsletters, yeah.
Haley, I think last time I saw you was at the live show in Arizona like 100 years ago, feels like now.
Right, that is more recent. So earlier this month, they braved the heat of Provo, Utah to cover the pretrial surrounding TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk's alleged killer. And what they found was, unsurprisingly, lots of chaos and nonsense.
Hey, real quick, everybody. I've got a solo project with comedian John Gabris. It's called Superstructure, and it's a weekly podcast covering the power of political repression, propaganda, and revolutionary struggles the world over. You can go listen for free at superstructurepodcast.com.
I'm good into that later.
That's what I like to hear. That's the whole purpose.
That's what it's for.
That's what power means.
The week after the 4th of July, LCRW covered the first round of preliminary hearings for the case of Tyler Robinson. Robinson is the 23-year-old accused of killing TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk on September 10th last year. Robinson has not yet entered his plea. The purpose of these hearings is to determine whether there is enough evidence for Robinson to stand trial, and if there is enough evidence to ask for the death penalty. LCRW was not able to get into the courtroom, but we witnessed a parallel story play out under its columns. Pizzagate promoter Jack Posobiec, now working for TPUSA, urged people not to give in to the conspiracy theories surrounding Kirk's murder. Candace Owens, a former TPUSA employee who went her own way, has been spreading any conspiracy theory that'll stick to the wall since Kirk's death. She's claimed everything from Mossad to maroon shirt wearing audience members to an exploding microphone, probably planted by Egyptian spies, killed Kirk. And people showed up to the courthouse believing her. Pilled podcasters and Owens fans camped out in front of the courthouse overnight, hoping to get one of the 14 seats to observe the trial in person, because they didn't believe what's being reported about Kirk's murder. One Owens-pilled woman even sat behind Erica Kirk the last day of the hearings and said she was less suspicious of the widow afterwards.
Once I got a good whiff of her, once I got the smell of her, then I knows that I can trust her.
Yeah, her tears seemed real. That's all right. What we saw play out was a contest between Kirk's survivors, colleagues, and fans over his legacy, over who gets to carry the flame of his bigotry and how.
You mean who gets to carry the flame
and fight for the gospel?
Expect Jake to come in at the top of every single segment, and every single time it's to disrupt it.
I'm like, wait a minute, I got a new musical theater bit. 4 of our listeners are going to be squealing with delight.
I've got a new musical theater bit. I mean, just the cursed words of a co-host I wish I could execute.
I have to be grateful he only knows 2 lines from the song.
Thank God. Thank God. Yeah, if he wasn't such a dilettante, he'd be much more of a
Are
menace.
you sure that you should be thankful for that? It might be a curse later on.
Oh, my monkey's paw's curling already.
2 fingers down.
So, yeah, these were just, like you mentioned, preliminary hearings, not even the proper trial, assuming he's going to, if he pleads not guilty. But, I mean, it was already turning into, like, quite a chaotic circus. Lots of, like, people trying to, spin their own conspiracy theories or, support TPUSA. So what did you find, actually, outside of the courthouse?
Well, I think the most notable thing was that there are TPUSA influencers pleading with people to stick to the facts of the case instead of listening to Candace Owens.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Yeah, these people, Jack Posobiec and this guy Brandon Tatum, who I'm sure Haley can explain in more detail about his deal. But these folks wouldn't mention them by name, and they winced, and Jack Posobiec sighed very angrily before he answered my question about Candace Owens. So they didn't want to mention her at all. What we found was, those folks were outside of the courtroom giving interviews. Most of the questions were pretty insipid, like, what kind of memorial do you want for Charlie Kirk? Do you want a big golden statue for your special boy, or do you want, like, a road named after him that's got, like, an indigenous person burial ground under the road, something like that? What do you want for your special boy? But, the questions were insipid. The media really didn't, other than maybe Brandy Zadrozny, who was there to kind of analyze the conspiracy theories. Pretty much nobody was equipped to deal with these people, and they took them seriously.
Their first mistake.
Yeah, their first mistake, like they were asking the Pizzagate guy, like, oh, how do you feel about all of these people spreading all these conspiracy theories? Do you think that, they're gonna stop when they see the evidence? And it's just, insipid shit like that.
Yeah.
They honestly reminded me of Mary Sunshine from the musical Chicago, if anybody gets that reference. It's just like the kiss-ass journalist that's like an idiot, and every single person there reminded me of either Carrie Lake or Mary Sunshine from Chicago. There's one listener that's going to get that reference and fucking love it.
They will. For me, for my part, the only thing that I know of Mary Sunshine is Little Mary Sunshine, which is a musical, and I don't think related in any way. So I'm not that listener, unfortunately.
Haley, when you said that, I was thinking that this other thing is not what you said at all. This is not that at all.
Well, you gotta, Julian, you have to fill stuff in. You can't just be vague and general about it. You gotta fill in the details of what's not it.
Yeah.
What it isn't.
Yeah. Listen, it's like when you carve away what doesn't look like an elephant, then an elephant remains, in the statue. It's the same thing. Yeah. If you say enough things that aren't what is at topic, then eventually you get exactly to the topic. You're a genius, actually.
It's a fine art concept called negative space. Maybe you should look it up.
Look it up. I stand humbled.
Yeah, I mean, there was a finite space, I guess, around the courthouse, inside the courthouse. So, how did people actually get these privileged kind of positions?
So we're not privy to how the courthouse decided who got in and who didn't. But we suspect very strongly that Turning Point had a say in it. There was a media list that you had to apply for 2 weeks before the trial started. And, mostly it's just big national outlets who got in. And, of course, Turning Point's fake media outlet and News Nation, and a couple of other of these, kind of right-wing outlets got in.
Mormon media, Deseret is there.
Oh.
Right, Deseret's there. I mean, they're local, so you'd expect them to be there, I think.
And they were one of the only media outlets that were actually covering the day of.
Right.
Yeah.
Mormon media.
It
sounds like a Power Rangers villain.
But if you didn't get on that list, what you had to do was wait for the seats that are open to the public. They're, I think, called the observer seats. There are 14 of those a day for whatever reason. I guess it was fire safety and, courtroom size and all that. But there were 14 seats, and people were camping out overnight to get them. I've got some health issues, so that wasn't viable for me, and we felt that, the real story is outside of the courtroom. We could comfortably cover it outside of the court because everybody could see what was going on through the live stream. But the people we saw outside of the courtroom at night, we interviewed a few of those folks. They were, for the most part, they were either conspiracy theorist podcasters, or Charlie Kirk mega fans, which I'm sorry to say exist.
Yeah.
It's like how Justin Bieber mega fans will run up to be at the front to see Justin Bieber at Coachella. It's like the equivalent.
Yeah, except this one, not as many people want the front of the front.
Well, I mean, maybe not in public.
One woman, though, that was she's kind of like a Candace Owens operative, and she's been on a few other people that are towing the Israel did it line, including Stu Peters. She camped out for 33 hours.
Jesus.
Wow.
Really shows how compelling some people find the story that Owens has been weaving. And it's I want to see those characters in real life, presumably.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I mean, she's spent all of this time kind of just nitpicking all of these things and kind of playing to the more openly anti-Semitic branch of the right wing now, that anybody who wants a taste of that kind of pill, but there's kind of in this socially acceptable Turning Point sphere of influence, that's their drug now. And a few of these people showed up. There was this woman, Brandy Zadrozny, actually, over at MS Now, actually got a little bit more out of her than we were able to. Her name was Brooke Johnson. She kept telling me in her interview, well, I just hope they get the right person or the right people who did this, and there's all of these questions about it. And we interviewed her on Thursday that week at about maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Brandy came back at about 2 a.m. after I was just too exhausted to, go back and try to get these people at their weird and vulnerable hours. So props to her. She basically said, yeah, I'm a Candace Owens fan. I believe all of these things that Candace is saying about her, about this trial. And yeah, that's basically what it was a lot of people, ordinary kind of on the right people, believe more of this kind of stuff. And the consequences, folks at Turning Point are kind of in the crosshairs of all of these conspiracy theories now, frankly, because I think there's a contest of power over who gets to lead the direction that the right wing's going in, who gets to be the talking heads, who gets to be the people who go on TV and make the case for all these extremist right-wing policies. And before it was kind of Charlie Kirk and his wing, and a lot of these people are more aligned with Nick Fuentes now. Like, Nick Fuentes is becoming somebody who's socially acceptable to be on TV now. That's what they're trying to push for.
Yeah, I saw some he was like on some interview, like that it was like kind of a mainstream channel, Nick Fuentes was, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that we've stooped so low as to include this guy in any kind of conversation whatsoever. It really shows you how far the Overton window has shifted since 2016. What a shame.
It's really horrifying, yeah. I mean, the guy's a neo-Nazi, and I guess neo-Nazis are okay to be on TV now. You know, it's basically the dream of guys like George Lincoln Rockwell, guys like Thomas Metzger. This is their dream come true.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he's like a whiny, you know, he's not even like a charismatic guy, you know, who can like, I don't know, like a failed actor or painter or something, you know, who can like rile people up, you know, get people riled up. He's just like a complainer. And like, I don't know. The whole thing is just, gosh, bad content.
Also, like, people within Turning Point have they've broken away from Turning Point because they believe that, like, Israel did it, or they believe that even people within Turning Point did it. Like, Charlie Kirk's cameraman, one of his cameramen has, like, kind of radicalized to the, like, more Nick Fuentes and, like, Stu Peters crowd. He was recently on Stu Peters, and they're, like, talking about how, like, Israel and Turning Point did it, his mic exploded and actually killed him kind of shit. I literally got a tattoo in Provo, and the guy that did my tattoo was like, oh, my brother was there, I think he exploded. So, like, it's everywhere out there.
Ugh, I feel like I swallowed a peach pit. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, everybody is so building. Yeah, of course, why not? Yeah, his shirt exploded. You know what? I saw a video a couple days ago on Twitter where I was like, you know what? It does look weird the way that bullet fucking is going through his neck. Like, I'm not even thinking about the fact that I watched a live execution. Totally desensitized to that already. I've gone beyond to like be looking at different pieces of his body to be like, is this what it looks like when a guy gets executed? I don't know. Are all the pieces in place here?
Well, there's something I told a journalist who I was talking to there. I won't name this person because I don't want to embarrass them. There's a decent person. But somebody I was talking to is a photojournalist on the ground. He said, you know, even I've got my doubts about this thing. Like, you know, they said there's bullet fragments in his neck, and how could it be that way if he was killed by a 30-06? That's for hunting deer. Isn't it supposed to go straight through you? And all of this. And here's all these other little things that don't make sense. And I had to tell him, look, in any kind of case like this, there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands even of all of these little complicated tiny factors. Some of the evidence won't add up. There's always evidence that doesn't add up. There's always things that don't make sense that you never really find the full story about. Why? Because that's the nature of reality. We don't get the full picture ever, even if we're right there and then. You know, we've only got 2 eyes in front of us and our other 4 senses. And that's okay. Our job is to try to take a look at the whole picture and be as grounded as possible. And unfortunately, a lot of media is weaponized against people being grounded and taking a look at the whole picture. Thus, you get conspiracy theories.
Well, that was perfect. Thanks for listening to another episode of the QAA podcast. That about sums it up. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's like really telling whenever you go into a scene like this that's being heavily covered elsewhere, because you kind of like see some kind of disconnect between what you see with your own eyes and what's being portrayed in more mainstream media sources. So what would you say was like perhaps maybe the more strange or revealing moments that didn't make it into like the ordinary national coverage?
I'd say the most revealing thing, and perhaps the strangest thing, was the way every outlet was too afraid to say what a vile person Kirk was, or what a pack of liars and bigots his successors are. I mean, when I was driving up Highway 80, I spent 8 hours, glancing between the road and Charlie Kirk's personal Twitter account, where the live stream of his murderer's trial was. And why did they stream it on his account? Because none of these people have enough clout, and they don't have the followers, they don't have the engagement that Charlie Kirk built up in his own life by himself. So even though they've said on record, we're not going to use his social media this way, blah, 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 they're using it this way because in a way they have to, and they're completely cynical about it. It's completely ghoulish, and no one's pointing out the fact that in all of these very sometimes subtle and sometimes you kind of have to logic it out and think about it ways, they're being completely disrespectful to the man's corpse. I mean, say what you will about him, but I mean, doesn't that kind of shock the senses? Just, we don't have enough engagement on our own, so we're going to use our dead boss's social media corpse to live stream his own murderer's trial, or alleged murderer's trial.
You know, I always thought, you know, when looking back at the career of Charlie Kirk, he was someone who always essentially, since he was 18 years old, basically sought out conservative right-wing multimillionaires and billionaires to finance his operations and his message. And he was a happy puppet for that class. He went out, and when he was told to focus on taxes and the national debt, he talked about taxes and national debt. When he was told instead the big focus is immigration, he talked about immigration. When he said the big focus is religion, they pivoted to religion. And so in that way, I mean, I feel like, you know, the people who really benefited the most from Charlie Kirk's activism and message have always treated him as you know, someone to, you know, put out in front of the public and hopefully in their vision connect with the youth. And that way he's always been kind of like a puppet. So it's not shocking to me that they would puppeteer his corpse even afterwards, because they're doing the exact same thing to him that he did when he was alive. I think he was a happy puppet. I think he was a genuinely right wing. He was happy to be used this way by his donors. But I really think that they really don't see any difference between how useful he was to their movement when he was alive than after when he was dead.
That's why I think it's so funny that a lot of liberals have latched onto this. He was about to turn on Trump kind of narrative, and he got taken out by Trump kind of conspiracy. And they kind of point to this like quote that he had about the Epstein files. But then you listen to him like the other 8 hours of the day that he's recording, and it's like he was basically always enthusiastically supporting the Trump administration and MAGA and the right in every way that he could. So I do find that conspiracy to be funny. Like, he was about to flip on him.
Yeah, it's funny because he's a person who's like so good at playing the center, like where exactly he needs to be to make the most money. And then you have a clip of like where it's like, oh, he's clearly in the center. He's dealing with like the Nick Fuentes fallout and the broader kind of like younger right-wing negative reaction to Epstein files in Israel. And it's like, oh yeah, he was clearly about to become independent. He was about to develop an independent thought for the first time in his adult life. Right there.
Yeah, and no, he was a cynical operative. He didn't care.
I mean, yeah, it's like his way of operating, being so cynical, it was like a 9-figure operation. So it's like he wasn't about to derail that by like going against the grain.
I have to imagine one of the reasons why people care less about like them like weekend at Bernie's in him, basically. It's because like people are just like more cynical and depraved, especially with the stuff going on with Candace Owens, how she's been using who it seemed to be like a close personal friend of hers in such a bizarre way, and like the widow of a close personal friend in such a horrible way. I think it's also just like, it seems like something he probably would have wanted. It's harder to react negatively to Kirk stuff when it's like you could tell he's like looking up and applauding what's going on. You know,
I don't know if when you die you become a ghost and like you can decide either to step through a ring. Well, in his case, like maybe you don't have a choice like where you go. But let's just say for argument's sake, you can kind of linger around and you gain ultimate knowledge. Like he knows who killed him, he knows what happened and everything. If he sees it like, oh, the guy that killed me is Tyler Robertson, and they got him, they arrested him, and he's on trial, and then he watches everybody else be like, wait a minute, I don't think it's this guy. Like, I don't know, maybe as a ghost that would be infuriating.
Okay, yeah, ghost theory explored.
It's just, yeah, so
Check mark.
ghost theory explored.
Well, you know, to your question, there is one other thing I kind of wanted to point to, which was, maybe you can take this, Haley. It's just about how Twigs was reported on.
Oh, yeah, this is like an ongoing odd situation, in my opinion, just because it's like the conspiracy angle that the Turning Point people are trying to keep their audience engaged with the case on and like have the narrative that Robinson did it, is that they're really leaning into like, this is because of transgender radicalism, you know? And the whole case with Robinson, like, he's fucked in several different ways, but also partially because he allegedly confessed in multiple different ways to their roommate who is trans, and like in their interview with like the Utah county attorney talked about this a little bit and like said they did use the name Luna with only people close in their life who were like friends with them, and in that interview did say they use, at least in that interview, she her pronouns, but like trying to talk to their rep has been impossible to get kind of more information.
Right.
But the media is specifically using their dead names, specifically kind of characterizing it in a way that is just like not correct whatsoever, you know, calling them he, him, and not getting into the details of this, which I think is interesting when the Turning Point folks are basically, they would like Twigs to be fried similarly to Robinson because they in some ways hate Twigs, even though they are a central part of this case and a pretty big reason why Robinson will probably, you know, it's not looking so good.
Thought you were going to say, like, go to the chair. And I was like, but we're not really like, we pretend not to be like that anymore.
So, like, the conspiracies that, like, Turning Point's going with is that they're trying to make it like, this is transfery radicalism. And, like, even their audience kind of doesn't care because so many people are like, Israel did it. But that is kind of how, like, Posobiec and people are trying to keep their audience engaged, I feel like, by, like, just anti-trans hate.
Yeah, I've definitely seen, like, an uptick. I feel like my mentions are just like the canary in the coal mine for this. And I see an uptick in references to her just in like as non sequiturs, which I think you can tell is kind of, it's become like a focal point. Despite, as far as I'm aware, there being no evidence whatsoever for involvement in any way. Right? That's why they're not charging her with that for anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We wrote a whole graph about this in the article. Is our outlet's policy is we try not to dead name somebody as best as we can, and we try not to misgender them as best as we can. So since we're unable to get into contact, we were using the last name Twigs and they, them pronouns only just for the time being.
And in the interview, they were kind of adamant, like, I only use this with friends. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's privacy.
Right. Specifically, they got immunity for whatever they said in their interview with law enforcement. That means anything that could implicate them as far as like helping cover up evidence, stuff like that, they just have immunity for as far as like the testimony they already gave on video goes, right? That doesn't mean that they're out of the woods completely. There may be some prosecutor who decides to say, hey, you know, Twigs helped Robinson cover up some evidence. Twigs destroyed some kind of communications, things like that. But I personally don't think that's very likely since they've been cooperating.
Yeah, you know, it all happened so quick. Robinson turned himself in within like 48 hours, basically. And the confession to Twigs, allegedly, which is a letter under Robinson's keyboard, and also a pre-scheduled text message and a message in their shared Discord chat with friends. And some of them were pre-scheduled, so Twigs didn't learn about this till late the first night of September 10th, the day he was shot. And then the next day, when Robinson was back at the apartment and they confronted them, Robinson said that he was going to turn himself in, and that's how it all happened. So it's like, you know, and then they were completely, as far as evidence in court showed, were cooperative. They said they took a photo of the letter, and that's the last time that they ever physically saw that letter before it got taken into evidence, and they willingly turned over their phone to the police. So couldn't have been more cooperative, but they are the villain and have been like stalked to the point where they had to relocate, but then they got discovered at their new place. So it's like an ongoing thing. And the media does refuse to cover this like at all. They're just like completely not even like want to explain any of this.
Yeah. Has the choice just basically been like, if we don't talk about it, it'll go away? Like I'm surprised. I'm surprised there's been, I mean, I guess I'm not surprised that the media is not protecting a trans person in any way.
I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. And this is in a way, this is my speculation, but something that I tried to say in kind of an op-ed at the end of our long article about this was, I think a lot of people don't want to talk about Robinson's alleged motive. I think a lot of people don't want to talk about that because for years, if you think about a lot of right-wing grievance and how it manufactures stochastic terror, it is the terror of people who are aggrieved, but they have some kind of advantage over other people in society, right? This is a little bit more complicated than just that. This isn't the Order, who were a bunch of white guys who robbed banks and murdered a Jewish radio host because they thought the Jews controlled the world back in the 70s or 80s. If it turns out that the confession is real, and if his motive is what the state claims it is, then Robinson was somebody who felt profoundly isolated in the place that he was living. He was somebody who felt that this was his only recourse. And that lines up more with people who do acts of terrorism because they're acts of desperation. Real desperation because they don't see any other way for their grievances to be aired. Now, obviously, if Robinson's motive turns out to be what the state claims it is, there's, as Liv, you've said before on this podcast, there's a very horrible and important unanswered question about, the violence towards Twigs here. Robinson should have to answer for putting Twigs in the position Robinson put Twigs in.
Is the state alleging the motive relates to the roommate in any way?
Well, what we know about Robinson's motive is essentially the quote, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. The quote is, "I've had enough of his hate. Some hate can't be negotiated out." And what we know about Robinson is Robinson was in a romantic relationship with somebody who's trans.
And also, the court did allow for the prosecutors to submit evidence that Kirk was a Christian and targeted for his beliefs in a way, which I thought was really kind of weird because the judge was actually I feel like trying their best to kind of give Robinson, he's not getting a fair trial in the legal sense. They film him in his shackles constantly, even though that's against the court order. The prosecutor has gone and blabbed to TMZ against the gag order. That letter wasn't supposed to be public. The camera caught it, and that's why they got reprimanded and cameras were banned on the final day because of that. So it's the judge is trying to kind of do their best, I feel to pretend they're doing a fair trial for Robinson, even though he's, I don't know.
Do you feel he's being railroaded or?
Well, it's U.S. Senator Mike Lee was there, and he was basically talking about how he wants to see Robinson executed in public. Okay. And, Posobiec and former Tucson police officer turned Turning Point USA influencer Brandon Tatum was saying the same thing, this should have been done within 30 minutes. He should be executed. After the hearing, Erica's lawyers filed a motion to try to get this thing sped up, and they said basically it's been long enough, kind of make a decision already. So it's he was never gonna get a fair trial. It's a very public case, and the biggest lying fuckers in the country are involved. But I did think it was interesting that the stuff about Kirk's kind of beliefs got submitted into court.
It seems like there's two competing narratives on the right. It's how can we be anti-Semitic about this, and how can we be transphobic about this?
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Can we roll both? Can we get double sixes?
Well, my thesis is that a lot of the conspiracy theories and a lot of the anti-Semitism is a veil because they don't know how to deal with what may very well be the reality of it, which is, there's been an incredibly violent oppression against trans people in this country that's escalated so intensely over the last 10 years or so. And I'm not surprised that somebody whose life was deeply affected by a trans person, if this turns out to be the motive, is that this happened.
Yeah, it's not supporting it. It's just like, hello, we're just saying the facts of the case, kind of, and
No.
like the
Mhm.
situation that they were living in. Because they don't seem like they weren't part of any org. They never voted either way. This wasn't someone that was like super hyper into politics, but they did have a life that they lived that was real.
Even if the decision was incredibly stupid, given what he wanted to produce, allegedly, yeah, no, it makes sense.
And it arguably is gonna hurt trans people in the long run even more because the Trump administration has weaponized this so much to like issue anti-trans rhetoric in general.
Yeah.
But that's basically what acts like this often are. Violent acts like this are often acts of personal despair. They're done by people who are in some ways ungrounded from reality personally in the psychological sense, and they feel overwhelmed by some awful political reality, and they feel, I can't do anything but take matters into my own hands in this way and hope that my pain is seen by a bunch of other people. And that's been the personal motive for a lot of attackers on the far right. And this was a guy who grew up in a very conservative LDS family. This was a guy whose dad took him out shooting. And so those were the tools that his imagination allowed him to have, should the state's case be proven in court, I should say.
Yeah, how much did you notice that, I guess, the tension between the transphobia and anti-Semitism among the people outside the courtroom? Or how explicit were those prejudices, I guess, talking to the people who were like lining up to try to get into the court?
They didn't want to mention the word trans, in my experience.
Interesting.
They referred to Twigs as Robinson's boyfriend. They wouldn't acknowledge that Twigs was trans. They wouldn't even acknowledge that. They basically did the same facile, oh, well, Charlie Kirk was killed because he was conservative and he spoke the truth about all of these things and blah, blah, blah. But they wouldn't get very specific about anything. And that's why I feel very strongly that they don't want to talk about the motive. They really don't.
I did hear Israel thrown out.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe a lot of the anti-trans stuff is particularly like a media position that like at least has been internalized by the people on the ground a little bit differently than the messaging has been put out.
Well, I think that a lot of the anti-trans rhetoric, which I'm sure everyone who's speaking here today knows this. A lot of the anti-trans rhetoric is people like Charlie Kirk were trying to spin every mass shooting in the country on a trans person, right? They're trying to say that, oh, it's all of these hormones and things make you crazy and you go on these violent rampages and, all of that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
And I think what they're scared of really gets to the core of conservative ideology, which is, one, your children are your property until they become adults. And so the idea that your kid could decide, hey, I got assigned the wrong gender, I've just realized this, and I need to make some decisions for myself about my own body, that infuriates them on that level. There's this idea that, other people besides them have a monopoly on violence, and that people who, could be their family members and know how to use guns and know how to do all of these things could just say, well, I'm trans and I'm a leftist now. Fuck all of you. And also I have a gun.
It's so funny that, for decades and decades, the majority of what you would consider, mass shooters, were majority had extreme right-wing, politics. And then one trans person comes along and shoots a couple people. And maybe they weren't actually even, I can't even remember what case it was that sort of set off this whole thing. And they literally became the Wojak pointing me being like, all shoot, don't you see, all shoot. To me, this feels like such playground politics. And the fact that this is, has even become a national conversation because of people like Charlie Kirk is so fucked.
Well, think about it this way. You know, when you're otherizing immigrants or whether you're otherizing black people, if you feel kind of an internal sense of security of, okay, we're all white, we're all Christian, we're all this, that, we can feel secure that we have a class and race solidarity and interest with ourselves and each other. And none of us are going to turn on each other like that. All we have to do is fear this other that's a different skin color. But I think they're so deeply affected and so deeply troubled by the idea that people can be gay or trans because they realize that could be any of them. And all anyone has to do is turn inward and say, well, I need to examine these deeply held personal things about myself, which is this idea of what my gender is. I did it myself. Like, I thought I was a guy for the longest time. I'm non-binary. Like, you know, anybody can realize that about themselves.
At any time.
At any time of their lives. I've known people who've transitioned in their 30s and 40s. I've known people who, you know, didn't transition until they've been married for like 20 or 30 years later in their lives.
One of my best buddies, his dad is like a tough Italian guy, and he came out in like his like mid 50s, you know.
Hell yeah.
And still is a tough Italian, you know, a tough Italian guy, but gay.
Also, when Kirk was shot, this is what he was getting questioned about. Hunter Kozak, who we interviewed, he is a liberal content creator, and he had gone viral because Charlie was in the middle of this kind of like all trans people are responsible for the mass shootings kind of narrative. And Hunter did a video kind of like refuting it with data because he's a math major and is totally analytical like that. And it went viral, and then Charlie was coming to his campus and he wanted to kind of like take that video question into the real world and was the person asking him the question about mass shootings and like how many are trans. And then the shot happened and they had their conversation interrupted about a minute in. So
Yeah, counting or not counting gang violence. Famous last words.
beat drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just today, you published a really fascinating interview with Hunter Kozak. It was like you mentioned, the man who asked Charlie Kirk the last question before he was shot. I thought this was really a very interesting and intimate peek into the kinds of harassment that people suffer when they're targeted by conspiracy theorists. Like, this guy thought he was going there to like engage in like, you know, a discourse with Charlie Kirk and challenging him on some points, but you know, within hours, you know, he was subjected to some, you know, really nasty trolling online. So like, what exactly happened to him like in the hours and days after the shooting?
I think one of the lines that really struck to me was we asked him how soon did the harassment start, and he was checking on his newborn baby who was in like the whatever the ward is called for, you know, newborns who need to be in care for a little while after they're born. And he looked at his phone really briefly, he told us, and he said, oh, there was already messages there. And he went to this hospital right after the shooting. I thought that was one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard someone say. But, you know, somebody came up to his door pretending to be a reporter, and they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They didn't know what the hell to do once they'd finally, you know, knocked on his door and opened it. He just got all of the kinds of harassment that you'd expect. You know, doxing, harassment, people following him. There was somebody associated with the Turning Point chapter on the UVU campus even who was harassing him. He didn't go into much detail about it. I don't think he wanted us to name the person, but that's what he told us. But yeah, people looked at him funny. And, you know, imagine seeing somebody get shot in front of you and then having to deal not only with the trauma of that, but the trauma of people saying you were involved. I mean, that's a very complicated psychological problem to untangle. You know, I think more than anything, the way this affected this poor man was he didn't get to grieve properly.
He was like a new dad, and he had 2 children under 1 the day that Kirk was shot, and his firstborn turned 1 like 2 days later, and he said he totally forgot about it. And then his newborn was in the intensive care unit, and he said he was just basically describing the mental breakdown that he was going through during this like week this first week. And then like school starts back up because he goes immediately to school because he just said he needed like the human interaction as he's like going through this trauma. And like he said he had some really great teachers, but then a lot of teachers were just like, they didn't even say anything. They didn't act like there was just like a school shooting on campus. And we're just like, we're just gonna go right back in class. Like and he kind of had to push his way to get like mental health care from the school, which is just like, you would think in this day and age with so many fucking school shootings, we would maybe have a little bit better handle this by now, but I guess not.
Yeah, he told us that he went into he's a math major, right? So he went into his non-Euclidean geometry class that he skipped the previous week to go ask this question of Charlie Kirk. And the professor just says, oh, all right, well, let's move on to the lesson, blah, 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 blah. And he just kind of goes, well, what the fuck, man? Like, do I get anything for this? Do I get any kind of recognition for this? And he said 2 months later, he asked this professor for an accommodation. And the professor says, oh, yeah, well, considering what you went through. And he just had this moment where he goes, oh, well, so you did know that that was me who was there talking to him when he got shot, you fucking asshole. And I mean, I think the thing that we as human beings, again, I'm going to therapy, so I have to fucking talk about my therapist all the time.
Man, I get my mail there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but the thing that my therapist told me, we have this deep need as human beings to have our experiences reflected back to us by other people. And when you kind of see that as a filter for how people grieve, how people do and don't handle these kinds of situations, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, he literally said like some of the, like he's just formed so many friendships during this period because it was like people who actually like went to the effort to take that step to reach out, which he was like, he realized in this trauma that a lot of people are kind of scared to reach out to somebody who's experienced something because they don't know how to process it.
And they don't want to think about it.
Yeah, they don't want to think about it.
They don't want to get dirty. Yeah.
And he did say that like one of the just moments that made him like basically just like such a human interaction that he had was that it was a guy that didn't know he was the person who asked the question. And when he told him, he said like the empathy that the guy felt for him was just, it impacted him so much because he needed to know that like other people understood that it was like a fucked up situation. He's not just a character, you know, he's a person.
I mean, this is something else I think you addressed in that interview, the strange distancing effect that happens when people create content about conspiracy theories that involve real people. Like, you shouldn't be shocked if you accuse someone of being complicit in the murder that they're going to suffer some sort of harassment online. That's just a serious accusation. But these people, they treat everything online as if it's just a fiction, just playing dolls, you know?
Right, they do. And I think a lot of it is a serious mental health thing. Like, a lot of these people aren't very grounded in reality. These conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theory consumers, they feel like it's a quick way to get a psychological need met to have other people say, hey, this is how the world really is. You know, here's how the world works. I've got the secrets. I can tell you what's really going on. And so you don't feel as not in control. You don't feel as uncertain about everything, right? And when you have that kind of fix, it's like, you know, talking to a chatbot. You know, it's not a real human being. It can't feel what you feel. And so what you get is something that flattens everything to just the two senses of your eyes and your ears. And if you step out into the real world without really being grounded, that's kind of all you have, is just this perverted sense of reality.
Speaking of innocent people who are targeted with conspiracy theories, there's another incident involving a conspiracy theory that I guess Candace Owens calls the Maroon Shirt Boys. Can you tell us what this is about?
So I watched too much Candace Owens, unfortunately. And she did have a conspiracy about, because Robinson changed his shirt and his shirt was like maroon that he changed into. And so basically everybody that is wearing, every piece of the set in the moment that Kirk died has been baked into oblivion. So everybody wearing a red shirt that day has been accused in some way of being in on the plot. And there is even a conspiracy that they were all in on it. So yeah, that's kind of the basis of it.
I see, like to help Tyler Robinson get away, I guess, or obscure who the real killer was, something like this. I see.
Yeah.
I see. So like people all donning V for Vendetta masks or something to like make themselves indistinguishable and anonymous, but except it's maroon shirts.
Yeah.
For just a really crazy disguise, a maroon shirt. It's really impossible to tell.
Well, you can go stealth. If you approach a group of people with the same, color shirt, you go stealth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like faction armor in Fallout or something.
You also discussed someone who got caught up in this bizarre conspiracy theory. There was a man named Adam Bartholomew whose teenage son was branded one of these suspicious Maroon Shirt Boys. So what happened there?
So Adam Bartholomew is this guy who's, I think he works at a car dealership or something in his day job, but he works with and for some, I think, Utah-based right-wing media outlet. He goes to different kinds of protests, more left-wing ones like the CHOP/Chaz back in Seattle in 2020. He told me he was there. He goes to like a bunch of No Kings protests and he just live streams them. And he talks a lot to the protesters there. I didn't really view much of his streams personally, but my sense is he's a little bit more respectful than the usual gotcha guys that, go out and do this kind of idiocy, right? But he was there that day. He's filmed about an hour and 9 minutes, I think he said, of the direct aftermath of Kirk's murder and just, everybody scrambling around the UVU campus after that. And his son was there with him. His son was wearing a maroon shirt, just happened to be wearing a long sleeve maroon shirt because his dad said, hey, we don't want you to get sunburned. And that's just what happened to be in his closet. So Candace Owens put him on her show 3 times, put his face on her show 3 times, and he got the kind of harassment that you'd predict. What Bartholomew told me was, the whole family got doxxed and harassed, and even people at his son's high school were accusing this poor kid of killing Kirk. Bartholomew told me that recently, maybe about a month and a half before we talked to him, there was this video his son showed him on Facebook that was like, kind of a game of telephone. This one guy recorded a thing, made content of it, but the original video was from some creator on Twitter who went and looked at his son's high school's website, found that this poor kid had gotten some kind of accolade for theater, and then said, aha, this guy's a crisis actor, here's the proof. So that's ongoing to this day. And I mean, this is a guy who was and still is kind of an Alex Jones fan and an Alex Jones defender, which I thought was really disturbing and fascinating. This was a guy who told me, well, yeah, I used to be a big Alex Jones fan, and I still think that the $1 billion judgment for Sandy Hook is too much, but I can kind of sympathize now with how all the Sandy Hook families feel.
It's like these people, they don't think like, the targets of these conspiracy theories are like real people. There's this bizarre empathy gap where it's like, oh, well, if you're suspicious, then like, then I can treat you however I like online. They can't wrap their heads around how damaging and painful that is until they're the targets of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a lot of people. I think that's, it's an ugly thing to say and it's an ugly thing to think, but how many of us are really thinking every day about genocide in the Congo, right? We don't confront problems and we don't think about problems until they affect us personally most of the time. And if we did go out of our way to confront problems that don't affect us, it could drive us mad. Like, I regularly talk to anti-fascist researchers, and they've told me, well, I have all these friends who are like saying me, oh, did you see this video from Gaza? Did you see that video from Gaza? Blah, 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 blah. And they'll go, dude, don't show me this stuff. I don't have time for this. I know it's horrible. I know it's happening. But if I keep looking at it, I'm going to go crazy. Because we've got to pick our battles. One human mind just doesn't have enough capacity for all of that, right?
Now, I'm also curious what you think about, I guess, the legacy of Charlie Kirk, because I already spoke about like what I think he really was. I think he was really an empty vessel, who was willingly empty vessel, who funneled millions and millions of dollars through himself to build a big organization and push the agenda of whatever his donors said to. But, there's an interesting online battle to try and, shape what to make of his shortened life. Like the admirers that you spoke to, outside the hearing, described Kirk as kind, non-insulting, and like devoted to open debate. And this is sort of the sort of the image that they're trying to shape for his legacy. Like, I mean, I can't imagine. He was, better than most how incredibly vicious this guy was. I mean, like how sustainable do you think this image shaping is going to be for Kirk's legacy?
So let me tell you just, why do these people who were Kirk's admirers talk about them in these kind of vague terms, right?
Yeah.
Why do they always just say, oh, he was such a great debater. Oh, he was such a impassioned orator, and he was just a defender of Christianity, and he didn't insult people, he didn't do this, which is all bullshit, right? He was a vile, vicious bigot. But what do these people have now that he's dead? All they really have is the lies that Kirk used to sell himself to old right-wingers with money, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that you can use in polite society to describe this man, are the lies he told about himself while he was alive. When we wrote our article in the aftermath of Kirk's shooting, we had a long discussion about what the title should be. And what we settled on was Violent Man Dies Violent Death, More Violence Follows, which was the most accurate thing, in my opinion, that we could have settled on. I mean, at the end of the day, people who admire Charlie Kirk know damn well what his bigotry was, and they agree with it. And the kind of bigotry that he fomented during his life has no place in a decent society. And these people know that in their core. They know that there are millions of people in the United States who, if they said what they really think to them, they'd be run the fuck out of town. And rightly so. So, what kind of legacy can you leave when that's your, the reality of your politics, but you want to present yourself as this, kind of person who deserves to be part of civil society, and this person who deserves all of this respect and accolades, and to be this, U.S. historical figure. All you have is the lies. So, what we got right after Charlie Kirk's death was really indicative of where things were going to go. Immediately after he died, his supporters went on this incredibly vicious witch hunt. They overextended their reach. They tried to get and successfully got a lot of people fired just for saying something mean about the guy, just for using their free speech. And it immediately backfired on them. And Kirk became a laughingstock. I mean, have any of you heard the song that goes, make her squirt like Charlie Kirk?
No.
Yeah, no, this guy was a fucking joke while he was alive, What was it that Charlie Kirk actually did with his life, Like, there's this mythology that he would go around and debating people, but what he was doing was he was putting on these political stunts where he would have all of these gotchas that would make his shareholders and his donors happy, where he would say, oh, here's the snotty blue-haired college lib that I'm going to humiliate publicly in front of you with my logic, facts, and reason and all of that shit. It was completely asinine. And what he was doing behind the scenes was building a conservative youth organization, which was basically just, let's put a bunch of kids in front of a camera and then get a bunch of old people to say, oh, all these youngsters love our ideas and our bigoted bullshit. Let's give this young whippersnapper Charlie Kirk a bunch of our fucking money. And they did. And the entire point of that was just, grifting money off of this dying racist ideology. But you can't do that without consequences. So what Kirk's real legacy was building Turning Point, which is essentially a front for a kind of older conservative, media and propaganda outlet mill, but with a lot of young people in it. And a lot of the young people who would even put up with being part of Turning Point are Nazis who are smart enough to know that I get a lot of money and a lot of networking done out of this. So every single year, I think, that Turning Point had America Fest, there was a parallel conference by a bunch of white nationalists at another hotel a few blocks away. They'd have to kick people out constantly over racist remarks, over just Nazi behavior. And the entire thing was just, let's scrape all this money barnacles off of the dying old conservative whale's corpse. And all the remorse around it were just these little groiper Nazi shitheads who were just feeding off of it. And of course, when, the Turning Point whale finally, meets its untimely end, like, what's taking his place is fucking Nick Fuentes, because of course it was always going to be Nick Fuentes. Charlie Kirk spent his entire adult life trying to balance the most extreme people on the right and corral them into Turning Point's stupid talking points and keep them from going any further. And he'd have to make constant concessions, constantly appeal to them so that they would turn up and be these young, bright people in front of the camera so that he could make money. That's his legacy.
And I'm from Arizona, where Turning Point is headquartered, and we still have to deal with their horse shit because, like, a flood of money did come in after he died, especially, like, merch sales. And, a lot of politicians, like, in Texas did, like, these shows of, like, we're giving them $1 million. And a lot of that blows back into Arizona politics. They really have absorbed the Arizona Republican Party, and it's just filled with the most worst, vicious bigots imaginable. The Turning Point Action COO during the days of the preliminary hearing was going on this racist tirade against a fellow Republican in the Arizona legislature because he's Asian. He's from Vietnam. And he literally, when the media reached out to him about it, about like how fucking racist he was being, he was like, well, I'm going through trauma because it's Charlie's week because of the trial. Like, he's like, I'm being racist because I'm dealing with trauma right now, essentially. And it's like, that's what I view the legacy of Turning Point USA is, that it's just like a gathering of the worst bigots in your state, in your school, in your church network, little things in the community that they have absorbed. And in Arizona, I don't think it's shocking that like one of the most violent incidents from a Turning Point USA employee, where one of them literally gay bashed a queer professor at Arizona State University and cracked his fucking head open, happened here because Charlie was going on a tirade about how because they are in the drag community, they are a pedophile. And it's like, after that attack happened and that Turning Point employee admitted guilt, Charlie was still doubling down on his social media and on their professor watch list that professor's a pedophile, further putting their fucking life, at risk, in my opinion. And that's so common here because all the Turning Point people, they flood to Arizona to make their fucking careers off of their little influencer network, and they want to work at the big headquarters they have in Phoenix that's been expanding every year since the 12 years they've been around. And they have that big America Fest here at our convention center where every fucking asshole in right-wing media comes here and films content. And you can always tell when it's happening because, like, when they're going through the airports, they're complaining about the fucking brown people that they see. Some of them go down to the border and go harass who they can down there, the humanitarian groups. So that's kind of what I view Charlie Kirk's legacy. I spit on his legacy. There's a reason that Erica will not share where his grave is because she knows that it would become the biggest fucking urinal in this country. So that's my opinion of him.
Yes, sir.
Well, the big top for this particular circus isn't coming down anytime soon. The pretrial hearings for Robinson's case are set to resume on September the 1st. And of course, Left Coast Right Watch will be there. Where can people go to assist and support your coverage?
Yeah, so the hearings, closing arguments are going to be happening starting September 1st.
Mhm.
We're going to be there come hell or high water. I'll walk across the desert singing the Fallout New Vegas theme, like soundtrack or whatever if I have to get there. But we are launching a fundraiser, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, if anybody wants to help us get out there. I'm sure there'll be a link to that in the episode description and all that. Yeah, so what we're expecting to happen is the closing arguments, and we may expect to hear Tyler Robinson enter his plea. I'm not sure personally if that'll happen or not this round, but we'll see.
Keep it tuned to LCRW for future updates.
All right.
And stay right here with LCRW,
Okay.
The Watch.
Oh, that's so good we're using that.
Wait, that's so fucking
Really
good.
good.
Wait, no, yeah. I'll do it better for you later.
Thank you.
Abner Haley, thank you so much for, again, braving the, the heat and the chaos and the ugliness that's going on outside. Because, like I said, I think this kind of on-the-ground coverage is something you don't get with a lot of mainstream sources, and it's something that's really, really valuable to have like a real full perspective of what this trial is doing and the sort of like how these bad faith actors are trying to exploit it.
Well, thank you for letting us reflect our experience back onto other human beings.
Yeah, thanks for letting me rage.
Our pleasure.
Always a safe space for that. Thanks for listening to another episode of the QAA podcast. You can go to patreon.com/QAA and subscribe for $5 a month to get a whole second premium episode for every regular episode, plus access to our entire archive of premium episodes. For everything else, we've got a website, QAApodcast.com. Listener, until next week, may the deep dish bless you and keep you.
We have auto-queued content based on your preferences.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, how are you?
Not too bad. How you doing, man?
Hey, good, how are you?
Not too bad. Abner Häuge, Left Coast Riot Watch.
Oh, okay.
I just had a quick question.
Antifa, cool.
Yeah. So, a lot of people online I've been seeing are criticizing y'all for, like, using Charlie Kirk's account to broadcast the trial. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, you guys murdered him, so you might as well have to watch it on his feed.
Yeah, well, I've seen some statements from Turning Point that said we're not going to use his account for other things.
Well, I can imagine why Antifa would be upset because we're using his account to expose your crimes.
Well, no, what I mean is, like, it feels a little bit...
Bella Ciao, which was written on the bullets, is the anthem of Antifa.
Well, it's an old one, sure, yeah. I mean...
And?
No, what I'm saying is that it feels a little bit ghoulish to use a dead man's account to stream his own.
So you guys kill somebody and then you criticize people for using his account, but you're not upset. But you're not upset. So he used the Antifa anthem. He said, "Hey, fascist, catch," but
yeah,
which are your slogans, which is your
I've never said
which is your anthem.
I've never said that.
And yet, but that's not ghoulish. But that's no problem. You don't have any problem with that. You just have a problem with people tweeting about it.
No. I'm just saying that, like, that feels pretty ghoulish.
So do you feel that murdering Charlie is ghoulish?
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's horrible.
Okay, so do you feel that what Tyler Robinson did is ghoulish?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I mean, no, that was a horrible thing to do.
I agree.
The guy's, like, dead. He's got 2 orphan kids.
He's not like that. He is dead.
No, yeah. California verbal tape, man. You know how it is.
Well, we are in court.
Ain't we, though? No, but... yeah, that was my question.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thanks anyways.
Are you good?
We're okay.